So it's now rubber band ball part 56, and I bought a 1,000-pound scale to weigh it, and it weighs in at 396 pounds, but we gotta get it to 1,000. So my friend and I began placing a giant pile of bands for what felt like an eternity, and it got dark, and we kept on placing until we were completely out. And now we gotta weigh it, but first I wanted to test standing on it, so I ran on it like a barrel, then I did that, then stood on it, and then fell again. And here it is next to my head. Then I put it back on the scale, and it weighed in at 422, then 428. So I don't know, but like if I should keep on adding bands. One day I decided to hang a giant hamster ball from the ceiling of the warehouse and make it a swing with me in it. And also make an actual swing. But first I wanted to play with the ball. I shot a hoop, then I bounced on it like this, and then ran and jumped and almost fell. Then did a flip and another flip. And remember, don't try anything you see in this video at home. But first I wanted to make the swing. I tied it to the ceiling and it worked pretty well. We had a decent swing. And next was the hamster ball that I also tied to the ceiling and then hung on to make sure it would hold my weight. I got in, let myself get aired up, and when we removed the beanbag, I was hitting the floor. So I had to tie the hamster ball up even higher and then get in again. And this time we removed the table and it worked. I was floating. So I got a push and I was swinging in the hamster ball. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it even worked. I spun around for quite a while, then got a bigger push and did this, and then decided to flip over and do this. So yeah, it was a pretty neat experience, and when I got out, I almost got stuck and then fell. So one day I decided to turn this warehouse into a cool video spot. Well, first I had to clean the place up, so I started by power washing the entire warehouse. And I actually power washed a few more times off camera, but this is the one I filmed the entire thing of. I washed the entire floor, and then put some of this acid down, scraped some of this stuff up, and it looked like this. Then it was time to paint. Bam. It looked really good painted and was almost done, but I got this beanbag, this hoop, this trampoline that I did a flip on, and then I shot the hoop, did a dunk thing, and there's also this loft thing, but comment any video ideas you have for me. So this is rubber band ball part 55, and I dumped out another 25 pounds of rubber bands and started placing. And I actually have a new scale on the way. It can read all the way up to 1,000 pounds, and I think the ball will be 400 pounds after I'm done with this pile, but we'll have to test it when the scale gets here. I launched some of these bands, and then I compared the ball next to me, and it's completely massive, and there's no chance I can pick it up anymore. But it's way easier to stand on than ever before, and I can even, flip off it. This ball is just completely crazy, so if you want me to take it to 1,000 pounds. So one day I got a bunch of bubble wrap and ramen noodles to make 2 separate boats for my Will It Boat series. I started with the bubble wrap and taped these 3 things together with a little bit of cardboard and went off on the creek. It was hard to balance on, but it floated at first, and I floated for a while until eventually water started to seep in and I had to get off and drag it to shore. Then I threw a rock, and the next day got started on this ramen noodle boat. And the plan was to keep all the ramen in the boxes because I didn't want any of the noodles to get in the water. But I finished the boat and took it out to the creek, and it floated pretty decently, but when I got on it, it started to sink. And it stayed afloat, but not with me. Maybe a squirrel. One day on part 53 of my giant rubber band ball series, I thought it was like any other rubber band ball video, placing a bunch of bands, but the clouds began to move in. After a while of placing rubber bands, it began to pour, and the rain just kept coming down harder and harder, so I got the beanbag to safety and then had to come back for the rubber band ball. Pushed that over 300-pound rubber band ball through the rain and into the garage, and then went back, making 2 trips to get all the rubber bands to place it in the garage. I shut the garage door, dried off the rubber band ball, and we got to work placing all the rest of the bands until we were eventually done. And the ball now should weigh like 347 pounds, if I should keep on going. So one day someone commented telling me I should make the plane even bigger, so I put 2 boards together and made the plane even bigger. Here's the new one. But it still had a problem. The tip was raising up, so we added some weight on the tip, and it flew pretty good. Here it is flying into a tree. But I wanted to get it up on this roof to throw into wide open spaces, so I threw it up and then tried to figure out how to get up. And then I found this thing and used it as a ladder. I was up, and here was the first throw. It was kind of bad, but the next flight was actually pretty good. But I still wanted a perfect flight, so I threw it again, and this one looked like it was going to be perfect until it raised up a little bit and then did a flip. And then I threw it again, and this looked like the best flight yet. It was just sailing until it hit a tree. I also tested this store-bought plane, which flew pretty good, and then gave this one last throw into the field. And I'd say this plane was a success. One day I decided to take my old giant paper airplane that didn't fly very well and recreate it with great stuff. So we coated the whole thing in this great stuff and outlined it until it was done, and then we let it dry and came back. And the paper wasn't very easy to peel off. It took quite a while, but eventually I got it, and it looked like this, and then the next day it was ready to fly. Yeah, the first flight wasn't great, neither was the second, and not really the third. It was a little bit better. And after another fail, I cut some off and had this flight. It was pretty good. Then I threw it in a pool and jumped in. So one day I ordered this new hamster ball that I thought would be better to run on water with than my old hamster ball, but it was kind of too short, but I dealt with it and made my way down to the lake to test it out. I got exhausted in the way, but I eventually made it there, and I normally put my hamster balls in creeks where there's a current, and I didn't realize you needed a current or else you just stay in the same spot, so I couldn't make it to the dock. But it was still pretty cool inside, and I tried to spin as much as possible to get some more movement, but after a long while of spinning and doing a bunch of flips, I was making no progress. So I just parked it in the shore, got out, and then started skipping rocks sad. Let me know what else you should do. So one day on Rubber Band Ball Part 54, I loaded up the giant rubber band ball with my brother and we drove it out to a warehouse where I would store it. I let the rubber band ball out and stopped it, and this is its new home. And then I dumped out a bunch more bands to begin working on it that night. And my friend and I got busy placing as many bands as possible as the night began to get darker. Now I'm in the process of getting another scale for this thing so I can get the exact weight perfectly. But it's massive and weighs around 370 pounds. I rolled it around, ran with it, and then rolled it back. Like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So one day on Rubber Band Ball Part 54, I loaded up the giant rubber band ball with my brother and we drove it out to a warehouse where I would store it. I let the rubber band ball out and stopped it, and this is its new home. And then I dumped out a bunch more bands to begin working on it that night. And my friend and I got busy placing as many bands as possible as the night began to get darker. Now I'm in the process of getting another scale for this thing so I can get the exact weight perfectly. But it's massive and weighs around 370 pounds. I rolled it around, ran with it, and then rolled it back. Like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So one day I went to Walmart and got all the rubber bands they had to make another rubber band ball. Because a lot of people have been wanting me to cut my giant 300-pound rubber band ball in half with a 1,000-degree knife. But I don't want to do that, so I'm going to make another smaller one, starting with this small one and adding a bunch more bands to it. Until eventually it looked like this. And it wasn't near as big as my giant one, but check out this cool little trick when you drop them. It launches them. And it was time to cut first this even smaller one. It cut it right in half and burnt right through it. And then this one. And it's worked its way through. And eventually I sawed a little bit and it just popped all the bands off. Remember, don't try any of this stuff at home. It wouldn't go through the tinfoil ball, so I just threw the knife at the tree and stuck it. So I'm now at Rubber Band Ball Part 51, and it is huge. I didn't get quite as many rubber bands this time, though, because there was a delay in shipping this week. But the ball's close to 300 pounds now, and I want to get it there. I placed this entire pile all the way until my phone died and stopped recording. But I still finished the ball and tried to weigh it, but the scale was being weird and wouldn't tell me any accurate numbers that made any sense. But I'm assuming it's close to 300 pounds. And the ball almost tried to roll into a car. Like if I should keep going. So one day I filled this inflatable pool up with oobleck, liquid solid. When you hit it, it's a solid. And when you move slowly in it, it's a liquid. We spent a long time, like 2 hours, mixing it all up until we had it full. And it was working. I stepped in it slowly and sank and then ran on it and I was alright. I also tried hitting it with an axe and almost got it stuck. Yeah, don't try this at home. This stuff is crazy though. I got in and got stuck, so I just buried myself in it and then put some on my head. Then I got out and tried to walk on my hands. And it worked for a little bit. Then I put some on my face, and when I slapped myself, it didn't even hurt. Then I laid down, got out quickly. My friend jumped across it, and then I hit it with a tennis racket in slow-mo. And then washed off. Comment any other ideas. So I'm now to Rubber Band Ball Part 49, and I have 25 pounds of rubber bands again. I dumped out the whole pile, and when we began placing for a long time, as you can tell by the clouds going by in the background, this took forever. But eventually, we got the entire pile done. And the ball is completely massive. I weighed it in at 263 pounds. And look at me sitting on it and then falling. And we can barely pick it up together. Like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So one day someone commented and told me to make a boat out of plastic containers. So I made one out of these plastic bottles. I taped this seat on like this. And it was ready to float down the creek. I got on and I took off. And it was kind of hard to balance. And then I fell. But I got back up and continued on down the creek. The boat was kind of unstable. But I continued on as far as I could go. And when I made it to the big current, I was unbalanced and fell off. And then I lost track of the boat. It was floating down the creek, so I chased after it and hopped on. And then fell again. And also chased the oar down and finally headed back. Comment what else I should make a boat out of. One day I took an air mattress and a bunch of cardboard and decided to make a cardboard air mattress type boat. And my goal was to make it to where you couldn't see any of the air mattress, so it just looked like a complete cardboard boat. I got it completely finished and it looked pretty cool. I took it out to the lake, then I jumped on and paddled my way out, and it was working. I was smooth sailing, then I got blown into the trees, but eventually pushed my way out and made my way around the dock, thinking I was going to dock it, but ended up just going all the way around and then headed for these rocks, where I parked the boat for a little while, got off, and then kept going, and I went all the way around this little peninsula and went to shore. Let me know what else I should make. So one day I decided to make a life jacket out of great stuff and a pair of slides. Started with the life jacket, then outlined a pair of my slides, and filled that out. I messed with the slides a little bit off camera to make them look like this, but the next day they were pretty good. I could walk in them, jump, and even run. I also threw them in this tiny pool and they floated. And then I got out the life jacket and tried to run the pool thinking I would run on water, but I didn't. And then I took the life jacket to the creek to test it. And when I fell in, the Great Stuff life jacket perfectly saved me. And it worked amazingly. Still do not attempt this. One day I decided to see if I could make foam board into a boat that would float me down the creek. This is going to be my first part to a series where I test if random objects or materials will make a boat. I had the boat made and then I took it down to the creek, put it in the water and got in. And at first I didn't think it was going very well. Then I put a hole in it and had to move it to deeper water. So then I tested it again and completely ruined the boat. Look at it. So then I ran off sad, but comment any other boat ideas you want me to make. So it's now part 47 of the giant rubber band ball. I let it hit a ramp and then got out 25 pounds of bands, dumped them all out into a pile, and started placing them. And this was a lot of bands, the most I've ever placed. So I thought, how could I do this more efficiently? And I had the idea, pay someone. So I paid 2 friends that day to finish up this pile. And they got busy placing a lot of bands while I watched occasionally and then switched in and out even once. But then they kept going until eventually they had a much smaller pile left and just threw that pile on and it was done. And it now weighs 213 pounds. And I also decided to spray paint it because I saw a comment that told me to. Like if I should keep going. So one day after making Shrek entirely from Rubik's Cubes, I decided I wanted to frame it on the wall as art. But I had to put it in a different frame that would be better. And when I tried to lower it, I thought I ruined it, but I fixed it and then re-lowered it, put it in this, and then put it in the better frame. This was the frame that would hang on the wall and it was a lot more secure. We poured resin all over it and did the best we could to smear it. It's probably not perfect. I've never done that before. Then we sanded the frame and painted the whole thing black to make the orange pop. And once that was all finished, we hung it on the wall and here it is. It looks really good. When you walk in, this is what you see. So I'm now all the way to rubber band ball part 48. I dumped out 5 5-pound bags of rubber bands and got to placing with some help because this was going to take a long time alone and this was a lot of bands. We kept placing and eventually had all the blue paint covered. And then eventually we got tired and took a break and then came back and finished off the entire pile until there was no bands left. Put it on the scale and it weighed in at almost 240 pounds. And it takes 2 people to pick it up. Like if I should keep on adding bands to it. So one day I decided to fill this giant hamster ball up with water and swim in it. And this one's a lot bigger than my last one, so it'd be easier to fill with water. And I stopped it at this level so I could still be able to get in and swim in it. And then I jumped in. And it was pretty cool inside. I went underwater and here I am. And then I came back up and put some goggles on and went back underwater again. And it was really cold, so I got out for a sec, got in the hot tub, and then got back in with a floaty. And then spun around. And then I decided to turn it into a giant batch. So one day I ordered around 300 Rubik's Cubes to try to make one of those paintings that I keep seeing on TikTok. We made a frame, I tested it out, and it would do. It was alright. But then I had to think what I would make and how I would make it. And I decided I would make Shrek using a color grid type thing. So then I started placing cubes, and I underestimated how long it would take. It ended up taking like 4 hours. And I didn't have black, so I ended up using orange. So when I got done, I rearranged some cubes and also took some stickers off and made it look even better. And the further you go, the more it looks like Shrek. So it's now rubber band ball part 46, and now I just take the rubber band ball outside to work on it because it's too big to just keep inside. I had my pile of like 15 pounds of rubber bands and placed the whole pile for a long time until I was all out of bands and pretty tired. And now the ball weighs like 190 pounds almost. Here I am trying to jump across it and then fly, and I can't pick it up. And I'm gonna have to order some even bigger bands, so like if you want me to keep going. So one day I got out my giant hamster ball to fill with ball pit balls, cause why not? Now this one has a hole in it, unlike the last one, but I'm gonna go in it anyway. I splashed around in it, kicked it, and then went off. And it was pretty crazy. I don't know how to describe it, but then some balls started to leak out, and even more. And after all the balls fell out, the wind picked up and started blowing them everywhere. But we got all those cleaned up, and then the next day filled it back up because I had an idea to tape up the hole and try it again. And it worked just fine. None of the balls were leaking. I ran through the puddle, then ran down the road, then ran back, ran through the puddle again, did another flip, and then came to the stop, and here's what the inside looks like, and let me know what else I should try. So one day I took my giant hamster ball out in the rain and filled it up with more water to slide around in. It was pretty cold, but it was also really slick and fun to slide around on. You could just run around and then start flying in circles. Here I am with a lot of momentum. Then I got cold, so I took a break and ran to a puddle and then went and jumped in my hot tub. After that, I got out, filled the ball back up with more water, and got back in and rolled around through the puddle, slipped around, ran down the road, and did a flip. And then did another one. So one day I was dropping my giant 160-pound rubber band ball off a bucket lift, and I had some cool stuff to drop on it, including an inflatable pool, an air mattress, and a giant water balloon. I started with this, and it did that. Here's the underwater slow-mo. It hit the water so hard it did this to the ball. Then I got out the air mattress and dropped it on it as well, and it didn't even pop. Look at it. but it did lose some bands when it dropped. So then I tried again with the pineapple on it, but I missed the pineapple. Then I did the water balloon, and it completely smashed it. Here's the slow-mo. And then it rolled off and went into the woods, and it just kept going down this very steep hill. Like, if you want to see how I get it out. I'm now all the way to rubber band ball port 45, and I decided to do it outside today. And my rubber band ball also needed bands bad because it was looking kind of gross. And I placed bands out in the nice weather for quite a while. And just enjoying life, you know, placing rubber bands until I was done. And the ball now weighs more than me at 174. It's getting impossible to move, so I just lay on it. And yeah, like if I should keep going. So I'm now at a rubber band ball part 41, and my 25 pounds of rubber bands got here. So I took it upstairs along with my giant rubber band ball. I took it all to the room where I placed the bands, and then I threw that in a package and opened it up. And each bag weighed 5 pounds. I dumped them all out, and the bands were pretty good. So I dumped out 10 pounds of bands and got to placing. And it was a lot, so I had my brother help me with this one. And we were going for so long, my phone even cut out because it ran out of storage. But we finished eventually and then took it downstairs. I got it all the way down and then weighed it in at 123 pounds. I took it outside and just look at it next to a wheel and next to my head. And here's my best effort at trying to pick it up. I can barely do it anymore. Let me know what else I should do with this ball. One day I decided to take 2 gold chains, 1 fake, 1 kind of real, flex tape, a giant water balloon, and a giant rubber band ball back to the pawn shop.
Got doubled up in the chains.
I brought the rubber band ball in again. I just wanted you to see how big it is. I don't think we're going to come to an agreement on a price.
Big. Wow.
And I started off with this.
With this giant water balloon. This is pretty special. It can hold a lot of water, and it's really big.
I asked him what he thought he could give me, and he said,
filled it up? Yeah.
he said he'd do 5, but I thought that was way too low. So then I got out.
Genuine flex tape from Phil Swift himself.
Work good?
Yeah.
Is that flex tape strong enough to lift that ball?
And I didn't know, so we decided to test it. We put it on the ball, he picked it up, and it didn't work. So then I got out the 2
Tell me
chains.
what you think each one of them's worth.
He looked at him and said,
This one I think you stole off your curtains.
and then he went and did an acid test on the other one and said it basically it was just gold plated, which is what I thought anyway. So I just kept it and then I left. Full vid will be on my YouTube. So one day it was rubber band ball part 44, and first I had to get the ball out of the zip line. I got it out and then I had to carry it all the way upstairs. I made it up and then I took it to the room where I placed all my bands and got to place them. I placed the entire pile of like 15 pounds of rubber bands for quite a while until I was done, and I carried it all the way downstairs and weighed it in at like 164 pounds. Then I took it out to the street and just look at it. It's massive. Can't pick it up. I just can kick it. Like if you want me to keep on going. So one day I put my 123 pound rubber band ball back on the zip line to destroy a cabbage, an Xbox, and a giant brick wall. Starting with the Xbox, I pulled back and launched. And it hit it pretty hard, but not hard enough, so I put it back on and hit it again. Here's the slow-mo. There goes my old Minecraft worlds. I put it back up for one final hit, and it got totally toasted. And now it was time for the cabbage. I set it down, and it didn't really do anything, so I threw it at a tree. Then I got out the Lego brick wall and built it up. I made it into like a giant rainbow wall, then went back and threw the band ball at it. Yeah, it was pretty cool. The full video where we smash other stuff is on my YouTube, Dylan Ayres. So after trying and failing to fix dents with hot glue, my comment section was filled with people telling me to let it cool down for even longer. So that's what I'm going to do. Here I am. Here's the time lapse of it cooling all the way until I didn't even have to touch it. And I then pulled it off and it didn't work. However, it is a pretty big dent. But there's other comments that said to try a plunger, so I tried that for a long time too, using fire and this plunger. This one might have worked if it was a smaller dent, so don't try this at home. So one day I wanted to freeze a balloon out in the cold and put food coloring in it like I've seen before on TikTok because it looks really cool. So I put the balloon out there and let it sit. And then I tried to ripstick, but it wasn't really working. So I threw it and then tried to make a snowball, but it was just powder. And I came back the next day and checked on my balloon and tried to do that cool knife cut thing, and it just cut like this. And then all the water started draining out, so I stabbed it quickly and the food coloring didn't really go in it. But I broke it. And then it disappeared in the snow. And then I tried to make a snow angel. One day after dropping my giant 160-pound rubber band ball on a giant water balloon, it kept on rolling and rolling into the woods down a steep hill, and I had to go get it. So I made my way down into the woods and to the rubber band ball. And a thorn hit me when I tried to get it out, and then I just kept on pushing as much as I could. And it was really heavy at 160 pounds going up a pretty big hill, and I kept falling, but I made my way up and was really tired. But I still had this piece of furniture to smash, so I dropped it on it. Here's the slow-mo. And the pineapple was still alive. And then I got out this 1968 Camaro. Just kidding.